and welcome back to Vox Podcast, the weekly pseudo-academic roundtable of pop culture analysis with drinking and swearing. My name is Christopher Maverick, but you can call me Mav, and I am once again here with my co-hosts, Hannah and Wayne. How's it going, guys? And, you know, if you read the blog, I pointed out one of you killed Katya. Not me, because I'm good.
That is inaccurate.
Unless that's the plot twist.
I realized as I read this blog, what you should have done is gotten audio from Katya before she was busy, and then at the end had her be like the villain. And that would have been a great plot twist. But now we're just stuck with the irony of my life of finally getting a Switch delivered the same day that Nintendo announces they're releasing a new version.
That's a plot twist.
I didn't see that coming.
Wayne, have you looked at the box office game?
I have not
recently.
Not for a while. How horrible is it?
Well, I believe you've lost almost half your movies.
Yeah. No, I haven't looked in a while, so I'm curious myself. Where are we? Anna, you seem to know better than other people.
Yeah, so I got bored one day, so I updated the spreadsheet. And first of all, because of Godzilla versus Kong, just destroying all of us.
For the moment.
For the moment. Secondly, the numbers will have changed by the time listeners hear this episode, because we're back in business. A Quiet Place 2 and Cruella are in theaters this weekend. That's me and Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
There have been.
Cruella. I see it coming.
I don't understand that movie. I know I say that every time it comes up, but I don't understand this movie. I genuinely don't. Anyway,
this movie is for people who hate dogs.
I mean, honestly, that's as good guess as any. But Wayne, you have 6 scratches right now. Mav, you have 4.
Mm-hmm.
I have 1.
And Katya has 3.
Yeah, and the greatest twist of all is if I hadn't insisted we use Metacritic to make things more interesting, with the movies that currently are in theaters or have been reviewed by critics for me, have a tomato meter average. We use Rotten Tomato meters of 90-something%, because that's just where my movies are at right now. This is all to say I'm going to lose horribly because things look too bright for me.
So you said we should let the listeners know the topic, because you're setting up plot twists galore now just with our box office game, and we should also, Nicole is back to joining us, and I've decided recently, since the last time you were here, Nicole, as regular guest, I'm no longer making a big production of introducing you so feel free to join in. So welcome,
Nicole. Hi, Nicole. Welcome back.
I'm sorry you had to sit through all that.
No, I find it fascinating.
I want to give a little context. We got a comment from a friend of mine who was listening to the show and said, so last week's show was on American Girl, which I for one really enjoyed, because for me, I didn't know nearly as much about the long storied history and deep lore of the American Girl universe, whereas Hannah and Katya and our guest Monica all did. So very educational show for me.
I will not say I'm an expert, though. I want to be clear. I just
yeah. But for me, I was, as a complete novice, I was I felt like for me it was very educational. And one of the comments we had was Reuven, a friend of mine, said he enjoyed the conversation, but we never really even said at the very beginning what American Girl was, so he had to figure that out. And he's like, "Oh, this is and he, once he realized that he was interested. So I guess we should give a little more, absolute beginner context on some of our shows, because I guess we just sort of assumed that even if you didn't know, even if you weren't deep into American Girl like I wasn't, at least you'd have some passing familiarity that it was
heard of it.
Dolls. So what are we talking about this week? This was your topic, so
was it my topic?
I think so.
I don't know.
What a twist.
We're talking about plot twists.
Yeah.
Just why do we like Why do we like them? That sounds so stupid. I guess talk about the nature. I mean, in the nature of narrative, I mean, there are good plot twists. There are bad plot twists. But just, when we're watching a story or reading a story and something goes completely differently than we expected, and I think we'll probably talk about good ones and bad ones while we're doing this. But it's obviously it's a thing in narrative. So let's talk about plot twists. And then 45 minutes in, completely change the topic and go elsewhere.
I mean, have we done that before? I feel like we've done that before.
Yeah, we've done that. not always planned. It just sort of happens.
I was thinking about this a bit this week. So just for context for people, for future listeners of the show who might hear it at some other point. After we announced that this was the topic of the show on the blog, www.boxpodcast.com, but before we recorded, we had there was an announcement, an interview with J.J. Abrams where he was talking about, about it was probably a mistake to make a Star Wars trilogy with no plan. Because
I mean, to be fair, that's what George Lucas did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, continue.
But JJ's
the difference is George Lucas didn't know he needed a plan because he thought there was only going to be one movie.
Right.
Continue your story.
Well, my problem with JJ saying that, he's like, oh, in retrospect, I'm like, yeah, in retrospect, yeah, you should have a plan if you're building a story. That's how writing works, right? And
I don't know about that.
We'll talk about caveats in a bit.
No. I mean, I don't know if it was J.J. Abrams' job.
To what? Be a writer?
No. Specifically Star Wars and the trilogy. Like the Star Wars and the trilogy. Like, I don't know if it was his job to plan out the trilogy. And I think that like...
wasn't.
Okay.
He was only hired for one. It wasn't his job. And that's my irritation, right? If you listen to our previous shows where we did our show on mystery boxes, right? JJ's whole life philosophy as a creator has always been, it doesn't matter what the puzzle is. Sometimes it's just fun to solve a puzzle. So create a puzzle and then let somebody else figure out what the puzzle fucking means. And he did like a whole TED talk on this. And fuck you, dude, because you got bit by it, right?
Okay.
Like,
No. Okay, look, I'm not 100% on J.J. Abrams's side.
Okay.
Period. I just want to say that I'll say the same thing that I did last time we argued over mystery boxes, which is part of that TED talk is not just like plot twist. It's like characters and people themselves are mystery boxes, and you don't need to know everything about them. Like, to use the Star Wars examples, we don't need to know why Han Solo's last name is Solo. Terrible Solo movie. That's boring. What is interesting about people is like their depth, and like there's something that draws you to Princess Leia is, I think, the example he uses. So like, it's not just, I mean, like, yes, like there are times when, especially with J.J. Abrams' work, and I want to remind listeners that J.J. Abrams didn't work on the series of Lost after a certain point of time. So like, don't use that as an example of him being a good or bad at mystery boxes, because that was not his work after a certain point. It's like, I'm not saying that everything he puts out is wonderful. I think we can all look at Star Trek Into Darkness, including J.J. Abrams, and say, that was a bad choice. But I think mystery boxes are more complicated, and also, I mean, at least he's like actually reflective about his work sometimes. I guess I'm defending J.J. Abrams a little bit.
Well, I guess I feel like I have to defend writers to an extent, that sometimes you have everything planned out, and other times, writers will say, well, the characters wanted to do something different, or I wasn't sure what the characters were going to do. And so there is an element of that, just like, how when they were filming Phantom Menace, everybody working on the movie thought Jar Jar was going to be this great hit, and then he was reviled. Yeah. So things changed, right? That going forward, he didn't have as big a part as they were originally planning, and you sometimes have to adapt. And so I think sometimes the mystery box is the characters and the interaction with the audience, that, or even who's in the position themselves, right? Like, if you've thought about or read some of the stuff about the various people who auditioned for parts in the MCU, that you're like, if Tom Hiddleston had been Thor, I mean, the whole tone, I mean, it would have completely changed it.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it would have been better or worse. I'm not going there, but I mean, it's the character and what they did with the character might have been altered going forward. So I guess I'm kind of defending JJ too.
Also, I want to again remind everyone that Disney gave everyone working on Star Wars a very tight production schedule that shouldn't have basically it shouldn't have happened. I blame Disney. And we've heard stories about plot lines that were discarded or not allowed because greater creative control than just a director or a writer said nope, not happening. So I think Star Wars and the MCU are kind of hard examples because there's so much control from the higher ups. It's hard to say who made what decision.
The thing with that TED Talk, like Hannah said, JJ was trying to say a lot of stuff. It's not just the mystery box thing, but everybody focuses on that because he's so famous for a plot twist. And my problem with what happened with Star Wars and what happened with Lost, he famously, Hannah, you said he left the show, and that's fine. I'm fine with people leaving shows. But he left the show having created mysteries that he didn't really have an answer for or a plan for. It was just hey, this is an interesting thing. Let's kind of play with it and see where it goes. And I'm not sure if that's good or bad. I'm not willing to say I complained about it on our mystery box show because it annoys me personally, but something annoying me doesn't necessarily mean it's the end all be all of, literariness, right? Like if you're into the idea of, oh, it's a plot twist, this is exciting, which is what JJ is saying. I mean, JJ is on record saying to him the most exciting thing in a story is something happens and he doesn't know where it's going to go. And he finds that exciting as a reader, as a consumer of literature, and also as a writer of literature. He enjoys that process. So I can't say he's wrong. I find it frustrating when I feel like there's nowhere for the plot twist to go, right? So can a plot twist for the sake of being a plot twist be good?
I think that's the defining thing. It's how much of this was planned, how much of it comes out of the blue. To use the thing, okay, just so people have a sense of time, a week from now is the Pop Culture Association of American Convention, and Mav and I are presenting, and Nicole's presenting and moderating. And I'm doing something on the series Wicked and the Divine, comics, graphic novel series. And about 2/3 of the way through, and for Nicole and Mav, I warn you, there are huge spoilers in the presentation. So, and I won't give them here, but about 2/3 of the way through, there is a development, and I guess it's a plot twist that just I didn't see coming at the time when I was reading through it the first time, that completely changes everything you think you know about this series. Mm-hmm. And when you go back and reread the entire series leading up to that,
okay, I know what you're talking about. Okay,
yeah,
I believe
he builds to that moment throughout the series.
Yes,
very skillfully. You don't see it coming, but that piece of knowledge changes everything. Mm-hmm. And that was mind blowing at the time. And still, it's part of the craft of it that I really enjoy. So it's a plot twist, but it's an earned plot twist, and it changes the direction of the rest of the story, as opposed to just we're gonna turn right here, and you didn't see that coming, did you? So I think a lot of it is just the skill with which it's executed. I mean, one of the most famous plot twist guys out there, M. Night Shyamalan. Mm-hmm. He's made his career on that. We should call him M. Night Plot Twist because it's easier to pronounce. But that's also just that's his thing. Mm-hmm. And some of those have been very good. Some of them I saw coming. Some of them I didn't. Some of them have been. Some
of them he probably stole from someone else.
Yeah, probably. And some of them have just been ridiculous.
I remember being so excited to see The Village, and then I went and I was like, oh no, this is the same as a book I just read.
Yeah.
He's got some of that. He's got a lot of that, actually. And now the question is, does that make it bad, right? People complained, and I don't know that it does, right? So my least favorite part of The Sixth Sense is the twist. I've said that on many times because I saw the twist in Sixth Sense coming. I picked up on it really early, and I find that movie to be boring once you know the secret. I find it unwatchable. I don't understand why people say it's their favorite film of his. On the other hand,
Unbreakable is so much better.
Unbreakable, I love.
Yeah.
I like Village. I mean, I understand. And the Village twist, I figured out a few seconds in, but I thought visually the Village was interesting. Like, so as a director, and I thought Bryce Dallas Howard was good as an actress, and I thought she carried it. So I enjoyed the experience of watching that film unfold. I don't think it's, I mean, I agree with Hannah. I don't think it's an innovative story.
And I haven't felt the need to rewatch it.
I've seen it twice, and it's how old at this point? I've seen the film twice, and but go ahead.
Like I want to be clear. Like, I'm not just like saying it's unoriginal. Like when I say like there have been plagiarism allegations, like there was legitimately a plagiarism allegation about copying from the book Running Out of Time. There wasn't a lawsuit filed as far as I know, but like people legitimately like put these, the publishers, I think, put these like two works up together. So like, I mean, there are a lot of works that have similar plot twists, but this was like very similar. Anyway, that's my little like teenage Hannah's axe to grind. That's all.
Personally, I mean, with the Village, I was okay with the monsters not being real monsters, but the whole, oh, it's modern day and we're lying to you all, that's the twist that I didn't like. I'm like, I would have, you know, like, no, if it's modern times, at least make the monsters real.
And so what we're getting at, though, is, you know, between the four of us, you know, we're reasonably intelligent people, you know, but we all have obviously a great deal of experience with literary works, you know, both text and film based, right? And we are all over it, just with the Village. We're all over the board on whether it's effective or not, whether we liked it or not. You know, and none of us thought it was our favorite movie. Hannah, even you know, you're probably the hardest on it, but it's not the worst piece of crap you've ever seen, right? Like you wouldn't put it that far down, right?
I mean,
I thought it was better than Signs.
I mean, no, but also like I would be hard pressed to name an M. Night Shyamalan film that I really want to watch. That's perfect because we're all over the place on it. But then the question becomes, which was, you know, sort of, you know, in the blog, why do we have plot twists at all? Right? Like, can a plot twist based movie be good? I think so. Because there are certainly people who love Shyamalan movies purely for the fact of they want to go just to be surprised and see what crazy thing they didn't see coming. Like, right. Like that's the experience for some people. Like, I don't think they can be. I don't think they're wrong. I don't think people are wrong just because they like jump scares in horror movies, even though I find them annoying.
I think with the plot twists, and now I can't remember if it was Mav or Hannah. I think it was Hannah saying that it has to feel, or maybe it was Wayne, it has to feel earned, right? That we like a plot twist, but it has to be something that works. It's sort of like in a murder mystery. If you read a lot of mysteries or watch a lot of mysteries, you can sometimes you learn and you can kind of guess who the villain is or what the surprise is. But if it's something that there's no way we could see coming, we feel cheated as an audience. Because when the twist happens, you want to be like, oh, yeah, and have it make sense. But if it's completely out of left field, we feel like it's not, or at least that's how I feel.
Now, I think that's an important point. I think a big part of it is our expectation. Those of us who consume a lot of media. Yeah, you're right. We learn how to read. We learn how to watch. We know the patterns. We know the tropes. You know, it's very easy to see what's coming. And yeah, you're right, Nicole, with mysteries and that sort of thing. If you figure it out by the second chapter, why read the next 300 pages? And the skill of, and there are reasons to read it, of course, but I mean, the skill of the writer, it's that whole thing of wanting to set up this mystery and answer it in a way that is internally consistent, but still keep your readers guessing about things. And so I do think a lot of it is just the preponderance of media and media consumption. It gets harder and harder to surprise us.
I mean, I definitely think that's true, but you know, I think that Ryan Johnson actually addressed some of this, like deals with plot twists and Knives Out. Technically, and actually spoilers, and like skip ahead and stop listening for the next 2 minutes if you haven't seen it, because you should absolutely see this film. When the pandemic hit, I bought two things: Emma and Knives Out on Blu-ray. And let me tell you, I do not regret that decision one bit, even though they're like streaming on HBO Max, but whatever. Anyway, Knives Out, like you think you know who did it, like from the beginning. It is like emphasized to you again and again. And then that whole movie is a deconstruction of a lot of not just like the tropes of mystery and like the plot twist and the gentleman detective, but also like some of the values of like the English detective novel that I would trace back to Wilkie Collins, a little bit Charles Dickens. Wilkie Collins, of course, was a masterist and putting things together into puzzles. Like I read Wilkie Collins was a friend of Charles Dickens, who wrote works like The Moonstone and The Woman in White. My personal favorite that no one reads, Armadale. A reviewer at the time said, like, you read it and it's like a puzzle, and you go back and read a second time, you can see how everything fits together. And serialized fiction does lend itself to plot twists and cliffhangers, and Moonstone especially also again is playing with plot twists and really like how far can you carry something really before it becomes unbelievable.
Well, I think that idea you just said, the idea of it being a puzzle, I think that's a big part of it. You know, we both like being surprised by things. We also like feeling smart if we figure something out, unless it's too easy to figure out.
Well, that's my question, though, right? How much? Yeah, because offline, I remember you and I talking about this, Wayne. And you say, we like patterns, right? Like we want to be able to look. We want to be able to look at our film or read our book and kind of go, oh wow, I didn't see that coming. Here's one most recent. Well, actually, lots of stuff I read has a mystery in it. The most recent thing that I think people would consider a mystery that I read was The Flight Attendant, which is now also a TV series on HBO, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed the TV show. I read the book first about a month beforehand. I had just coincidentally happened to read the book. I'm never the kind of guy who usually says, the book's better. I don't like doing that because I like to consider them separately. In this case, I very, very, very much enjoyed the book better because the TV show, I don't want to say it's not a mystery because there are there are things for you to figure out, but there are several mysteries during the course of the book. And the most interesting one to me is revealed 20 minutes into the first episode of the show. And so it changes the dynamic of, to me, what's interesting about that book is figuring out, it's driven by a murder mystery. And then there are other side mysteries, right? And the murder mystery, you spend most of the book trying to figure out, who did it, who did the murder. The TV show tells you on the first episode. It's, here's the bad guy. And now you can chase. So it becomes a question of why. And you don't even know in the book that you're trying to figure out why. There's just so many layers and they got rid of it. So I think that there's some fun to that, right? Like I think Wayne's right. And, part of the fun of why I enjoyed that book was, oh my God, I know this is a mystery. Now I'm trying to put together patterns and stuff. On the other hand, there are a show that I watched recently that I know everybody here has watched is Falcon and Winter Soldier, which I very much enjoyed. And yet there was a mystery in it, which I found super fucking frustrating the entire series because I spent the entire time going, God, I hope Sharon's not the power broker. Please let there be something more interesting than making Sharon the power broker. And then it was like, oh, who's the power broker? And every week it's like, well, every hint points to Sharon and we're running out of episodes and we don't have any other characters. So it's probably Sharon. Yeah. And okay. And it's finally, it's like, and then at the end, in the last episode, it's like, surprise, Sharon's the power broker. And every viewer's like, yeah, we fucking know. Yeah. She's obviously like we're not stupid. So I was irritated by that as a viewer. because it's not that the twist was unearned. It was
I would say it was pretty unearned. It was telegraphed.
Right.
I think it was unearned in the sense that, like, we know Sharon Carter from the movies, they gave her nothing to do in the movies, which is why, like, her relationship with Captain America never worked. Sorry. Like, I like the idea of, like, a human woman, another human woman in the Marvel universe as a character. It's not that. It's just they gave her nothing to do but, like, stand there and flirt with him.
She exists in the comic.
And then they, in the show, I kept waiting for Sharon to show up and then when she showed up, I kept waiting for her to, like, do something and give her more screen time, because I read an interview and it was like, the show is really about Bucky and Sam and Sharon and, like, who they are. And, like, we see Bucky go on a really intense journey. We see Sam going on an intense journey. Whether you think those work or not, that's another episode that we already did. But, like, we don't see that with Sharon. Like, it just feels very cheap. It feels like they needed a named villain for it to mean something.
Yeah, she's there to be the twist. And I'm like, I don't care. In fact, if you remove, and again, I'm sure, just for the listeners who have read the interviews, their filming was greatly affected by the pandemic. There was supposed to be more with her, and Emily Van Camp was the one actor that they couldn't get much more time. She had to do all of her filming as a favor to them in off time from her day job, from her other TV series that she does.
Yeah, she's on The Resident.
Right. So I get it. Right. I get that. But the problem is, given the narrative what we got with Falcon and Winter Soldier, she only exists to be a plot twist. And since I have no reason to care about Sharon Carter of the MCU, I want to care about Sharon Carter of the MCU because I care about Sharon Carter, the character from the comics, and because I see potential for her to be interesting. But what I know about her as far as a character in their world is she's a hot chick who doesn't do much that got to kiss somebody. And then she sat around and waited for something interesting to happen on a TV show, and then got one episode of interest. Like, she was interesting for that one episode where she's actually part of the team. And then she's on the phone a lot. You know, like, it's not, she doesn't have the depth because they're relying too much on the twist, but the twist doesn't mean anything to me because I don't really care about her.
Yeah, and in WandaVision, it's not like we didn't see the Agatha reveal coming well before it did, but somehow the execution of it, I completely bought into it.
Yeah, I cared about the character.
I cared about it. Yeah,
I think too. I think maybe. Because I watched WandaVision with a friend who is not a comics fan. I saw the Agatha thing coming. She didn't.
Yeah, and that's the other piece of it with any of that sort of stuff is those of us who are versed in this stuff, we're looking for those Easter eggs. We see that stuff well in advance of other people.
Well, and sometimes, I mean, if you're talking about, like, plot twists or something like that, it makes me think of the episodes where we talked about Bridgerton, right?
Yeah.
In the books, the reveal of Lady Whistledown doesn't happen until book 4. But they put it at the end of season 1. And of all the things about that show, that was one of the ones that bugged me the most. I wanted it to be a secret longer. But
I get it.
Yeah. So sometimes, for me, that reveal bugged me. For a lot of people who hadn't read the books, they were like, "Oh my God, that was awesome!"
Well, it becomes exciting. It's an exciting. If you don't know that there's an alternative,
right?
It becomes a reason to go back and rewatch the show and see, because there are plenty of hints that it's her throughout the series. I mean, I've watched Bridgerton twice now, and I've read the first book, and there are plenty of hints in the show of who I'm not ruining it for Wayne, because I don't think you've watched it, but it doesn't matter, right? Like, we did 2 whole shows on Bridgerton. Go listen to them, right? But
I'll be right back.
Yeah. But there are plenty of hints. Like, I wouldn't say that that's a plot twist that comes out of nowhere. Like, it's there. The information's there. You can figure. There are a few things that maybe don't make a lot of sense, which we talked about on that episode, where it's like, you should have, if you're really Lady Whistle now, you should have known this, or, whatever. but for the most part, it is a well structured plot twist, as opposed, to where I didn't feel like it was, and then aliens landed, and it wasn't completely out of left field. Now, but that's, and I use that as my example of a bad plot twist all the time. Which it's like sort of the very, very novice writer in fiction class who, I don't know how to get out of this, so. And so then aliens landed, which, I mean, the most famous, probably successful version is the eagles and Tolkien books, which appear when he doesn't know how else to in the scene. Eagles bring people from one scene to another, but can only do it when there's no other option.
They could have just flown Frodo and Sam to Mordor and skipped that entire middle book.
Yes, but they don't because we need the novel to happen, and so I don't plot twist like that. But I'm going to give a weird example of one where just a completely out of left field plot twist that I think makes the entire movie. And that is the film From Dusk Till Dawn, which I adore. And it is From Dusk Till Dawn is a weird psychodrama crime film that about a family being kidnapped by these two criminals and trying to get away, and then they cross the border into Mexico, and it's a B movie vampire movie. All of a sudden, nothing that happened before that matters. It's two movies glued together, and I love it. It works so well with a massive, completely unearned plot twist. It's just like, it's literally I don't know if anybody's seen it but me. I'm giving it away. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Halfway through the film, it's just a different fucking movie, and deal with it because we're bored with the old movie, so we're doing the other one, and it works for me. Like it's a massive twist, completely unearned, with there's no reason beforehand to think, there's nothing leading up to it. There's no foreshadowing. It's just, I'm doing a vampire movie now. Okay.
Mm-hmm. The TV series Fargo sort of trades on the unexpected movements in plot. I don't know that I would call them plot twists. Part of the conceit of it is these are real events. These things really happened. And to me, they play on that, the unpredictability of life, the fact that we don't have plots and people just do stupid shit that you don't see coming. And a lot of times the entire plot will turn on something like that. That's just like, that doesn't make any goddamn sense. But, people do that kind of thing. And then in the middle of one season, a spaceship shows up for a brief scene and takes off, and it's never explained. And then it just, for some reason, I completely buy into it. Same kind of thing. Like, oh, there's a spaceship now. Okay. And then the story continues. But that's a series, I think, from episode to episode, just goes in directions I really don't see coming because of the improbability of actual human behavior.
For me, it's Magnolia is another one. The film Magnolia, which I think I don't know. Has anybody seen Magnolia?
Yeah.
Okay. It rains frogs. I actually think it's earned. I think it's foreshadowed by the plot. I think that if you pay attention, you can tell that it's going to rain frogs. They do mention it earlier in the film that this could happen.
There's some talk in that season of Fargo of strange lights in the field and some of that sort of thing, but it's still kind of out of the blue and doesn't mean anything to the bigger plot. It's just this weird event in the middle of a shootout.
What we're getting to though, I think, is things can be weird, and they can be. I think you can have weird plot twists that don't make sense and that are. So what is it then? What makes it something being earned or something being, we talk about it like it's natural, or Shyamalan did or didn't do a good job, or, why can't aliens just show up?
As much as we hate it, I think it has to do with conventions of genre. I hesitate to bring it up because I know I'm going to regret it, but I'm going to do it anyway. Riverdale.
Greatest show on television, yes.
It's always been campy, right? It's always
At its best. Hold on. For the listener, for Hannah to make her point, I'm going to take Riverdale seriously and not just do the bit, but we're having a serious Riverdale discussion. So yes, at its best, Riverdale is always campy. It is not really. It is often fails when it forgets that. So
and it's not the most realistic show.
And no one expected it to be, because one, it's a CW show. Two, they establish the tone straight away. Three, if you are a fan of the Archie comics, then you might remember things such as Archie versus Predator. And so, like, honestly, nothing they've done on that show is as random as like some of the Archie comics.
Exactly.
Which, like, I know it's not saying much. I know it's a low bar, but you know, like, there's a sort of
front on Archie versus Predator. That is a fine piece of literature.
No, it's amazing, but like, you know, it's
still Archie versus Predator. Yes,
it's bad. It's bad shit. But like, you enjoy it because of that, because that's like you understand what world you're in. So like, Archie can have like all sorts of strange plot lines, random twists that may or may not make sense, characters acting what we would think as irrationally themed soapy stuff because of like what we accept about it as a show. Mysteries, you know, like they can be dark and weird things can happen. Like Jane Eyre is a like gothic mystery. A mad woman in the attic, which is an unfair categorization of Bertha Mason, and she deserves justice. But you know, like the way that like she's portrayed by the narrator of the book, like she can be in the attic and show up, and Jane can discover her, and it isn't just some random twist because that's the atmosphere. Bertha Mason would never show up in a Jane Austen novel, and the moment she did, readers would be like, "What?" That's all I'm saying. In a long-winded
genre
way.
Convention,
like the rules of the. It's not even, I guess, genre convention so much as like the rules of the world that you establish, and how things follow from that world. Like,
so I'll look. I mean, since you were nice enough to use Riverdale, I'll use Lost. I'll say Lost works in a lot of one of the things that makes Lost work is, I believe, whether it's early seasons or later seasons, it doesn't matter where in the Lost is 6 seasons, I believe. Yeah, and it doesn't matter where in the 6th season run we are. Lost is a world where weird, batshit, crazy stuff happens, and sometimes there's no answer, and sometimes there are. And just try to pay attention to everything, because some things may matter and some things won't. And as a Lost fan, you are giving the creators, the filmmakers, you are giving them that leeway to tell you, to throw out a polar bear, throw out a smoke monster, throw out some numbers, and you're like, I'm keeping notes because some of this is going to come back. I don't know what it is, but I'm keeping notes. And that's your job as a viewer, right? Your job as a viewer is to try and speculate, what the fuck do these numbers mean? What's the smoke monster?
And that's
Are they
part
dead?
Of the fun of the show, right? It's just trying to speculate on that, right?
Right. And they don't all have answers. A lot of stuff does have answers by the end of the series. Some stuff doesn't. That's the contract that you're making with the show, and you go into that, right? The contract with Riverdale is, shit's going to get weird. Okay, it's Archie, but shit's going to get weird. So be ready for it, right? And when Riverdale's at its best, it's when they're really leaning into the absurdity of it. When Riverdale fails, is on the episodes where, and Wayne, as a fan yourself, you'll probably agree, when they try to take it too seriously, it completely falls apart, right?
Yeah.
It's a CW show, right? It cannot be as serious as other CW shows. It cannot be the Arrow TV shows.
Right.
It can't be the 100. It can't be Legacies or any of that. It's got to be completely crazy or it falls apart. And again, leaving apart the, best show on television thing. Lately, I have enjoyed Nancy Drew as a show far more. Nancy Drew surprised me. It's a really good mystery show. It's like, I don't know if for people who haven't seen Nancy Drew, if you liked the X-Files, the early seasons of the X-Files, it's the early seasons of the X-Files. It's got that vibe to it. They take it seriously. It's got some silliness because all of the characters are characters from either the Nancy Drew mysteries from the old days or the Bobbsey twins are in it now. And
that's great.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely awesome. So Nancy knows the Bobbsey twins, and now she knows Tom Swift as well. And it's been great, but it's a very serious show in a way that Riverdale isn't. Other than it's a serious supernatural detective show. that if you don't know the references, like if you don't know the Archie joke, Riverdale makes no sense. If you don't know the Nancy Drew jokes, you'll just think you're watching a show like X-Files.
So tell me, please, Tom Swift talks entirely in bad adverbs.
He's reimagined. He is he is a I'm better. Have you watched it? Has anybody watched it before? No. Tom Swift is he's black. He's a 25-year-old rich black kid who is gay and hiding it from his inventor father. And he's just an inventor, and he knows he's better than everybody else, but he's the nicest guy in the world. So
now you just ruined season 2 for me.
No. Because he's only on one episode, and getting there is the fun of it. Trust me.
And you know what, Nicole? There are plot twists
all over the place.
I've seen the first season, but
there's plot twists all like the most important plot twist. We'll have to do a show on Nancy Drew. Listeners, let us know in the comments if you're watching Nancy Drew, because I don't think anybody's watching it but me, and I so want to talk about it. Like I kind of wonder if yeah.
I like I said, I've watched season 1. I haven't watched season 2 yet, because when I started watching it, they were already partway into season 2. So I'm kind of waiting until I can binge it so I can start at the beginning of season 2.
It's great. There's so much. There is so much goodness about just like the silliness and the batshit craziness of it is tempered down to where I was getting. The reason I talk about it with plot twists is the plot twists in Nancy Drew, unlike Riverdale, the plot twists in Nancy Drew are so that you can go back and the hints are there, right? Like there are so in Riverdale, it's like, no, it was secretly this character that we said was dead 4 seasons ago, and don't worry about it. They were on, fiddle faddle or whatever they call the drugs. Like they just make shit up, right? It's just crazy and stupid. Right.
I want to put a pin on X-Files because I want to come back to that, but I want to follow up on something on Riverdale and then tie that into a comics thing where plot twists I don't think do work. My roommate and I have theorized kind of jokingly that Riverdale is a show where this episode has a room full of writers and they write an episode and then they all leave and an entire new room full of writers come in for the next episode and have to pick up with what others had left off.
Yeah, like with no overlap whatsoever. Like I could totally overlap just notes.
So many years ago, there was I think a 12-issue miniseries, and they did it again recently from DC called the DC Challenge, where the first issue was written by a writer-artist team, and then the next issue came on with a brand new writer-artist team, and there's no ongoing
the exquisite corpse about yes, it is.
Right, exactly. And the idea of it was let's end our chapter with something that there's no possible way that the next writer can get them out of it. So there are all kinds of plot twists. Most of them were completely absurd and meaningless because it was just this ongoing attempt to fuck with the next creative team. Mm-hmm. And then they would move on. And you try to read that as a narrative, it makes no sense whatsoever. And that's kind of the nature of an exquisite corpse anyway.
Explain what that is for the listeners. I said it, but it's a writing exercise. If you've ever taken a fiction workshop, it's kind of the game of it's the game of telephone. But the writing exercise is maybe we should do a show of this once. We each write a story that's one page, and then I write my page of the story, and then I hand it to Wayne, and he has to write the next page, and he's got to use the characters and the situations that I've introduced. It's an improv storytelling exercise, right? He can add to it, but he's not supposed to contradict or destroy. He can resolve and he can embellish, but you're not just like his idea was stupid. You're not supposed to do that. It's an exercise of shared building upon.
I do that actually in my creative writing classes. And I do it in I do fiction, playwriting, and poetry. And so of course, it's sometimes interesting, and sometimes they don't listen to me and want to just destroy it. But sometimes it's really entertaining.
It's an exercise in yes and if anybody's ever taken an improv class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If we're talking twists, I can think of multiple shows that give us some sort of twist. And sometimes if we're going to talk about one that, felt bad, okay, let's go way back for a moment to the Dallas thing. right? With the whole, oh, Bobby's not dead, right? It was all a dream. And something like that feels cheap.
It
right?
was cheap.
Because,
Yeah.
right. As opposed to, you know, but it also just sort of stymies things, right? And then, as long as I'm talking about old shows, if we go back to the original V.
Oh, wow.
By the time we found out that they were lizards, everyone was like, oh my God, right? And then you go on from there and it becomes, you know, important. So there are also, so there's not just twists that happen at the end, but there's also twists that sort of, that change something and then you move forward, right? And sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not.
Yeah. The last page of the first issue of Thunderbolts.
Yes.
Yeah, brand new superhero team.
Spoilers?
And
Okay.
spoilers.
This is a good example. So
Spoilers for a 20.
For a comic came out 25 years ago, right?
Yeah, so a 20-year-old book, but like one that people might not have heard of, because I want to respect people's. I figure a lot of people, probably a lot of our listeners, but just people in general, a lot of people's experience with Marvel will be the MCU. And this is, sooner or later, they're going to have to mine the Thunderbolts, and it's going to be, it's going to matter sooner or later. So potential spoilers.
We just said there was a twist.
No, but I think we should, because I think the twist here is a perfect example of how a plot twist can be good.
Because it was built on, you know, at that point, 30 years of Marvel history. If you go back to 1939 or whatever. So we have, it's a period of time when the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, all the main heroes are assumed to be dead. They're actually often in another dimension doing stupid shit. And a brand new superhero team shows up to take their place. It's led by Citizen V, and we're here. We can't be the Avengers. We'll never be able to replace those heroes, but we're here to do the best job we can. And they're heroic and successful, and the world loves them. And on the last 2 pages, it's revealed it's actually Baron Zemo and the Masters of Evil, a group of supervillains who've been around forever, posing as heroes to gain the trust of humanity and eventually get all the codes and secret stuff that the Avengers had so they can take over the world, because that's what Citizen V wants to do. And that was the end of the first issue. And it was this huge unexpected twist that set up the entire series. So it wasn't a twist ending. It was a twist beginning, but it set up the premise. And from that point on, they did all kinds of interesting things. The genuine redemption arcs. Some of these people who had been villains. It was one of my favorite series at the time it was coming out. Some of these people who had been, less than successful villains, B level, C level, their entire career, and they're acting as heroes and getting positive reinforcement. And that feels much better than being beaten up and going to jail.
Yeah, Atlas and Screaming Mimi, 2 of the characters in particular, are just like, wait a minute, this is a much like this hero gig. This is a much better deal for us. And
Screaming Mimi as Songbird over the course of time eventually became a genuine hero in that universe and is accepted as a hero. She's been in one of the permutations of the Avengers since then. I
swear, when we got Zemo in Civil War, I thought, oh my God.
Yeah, and I do think they're going to do that in the MCU. It's going to be a different group of characters because they haven't introduced all the ones who were in Thunderbolts. I think we're going to see characters who have appeared in the movies. I think Ghost is an option. I think Taskmaster, once he appears in Black Widow.
I want to go back to something that I said, and then I want to disagree with myself.
We'll let you argue it out.
So I said, I think that there is something about world building or the conventions of genre that make us think about twists as being good or that makes sense. But I also think there's an element of character development to it. I will not go back the show that must not be named and use that example again, but a different example. Jane the Virgin.
Okay.
Spoilers for like the final half of the series. Her husband dies, right? She's very sad. Like, she grieves. There's a time jump. So like they can go back to having like a happy show and they don't have to like have like her grieve for like 3 seasons on air. It's a very traumatic thing. They finally reveal, though, that like cheaply, in my opinion, that he's like had amnesia, and then like they bring him back, which like it fits with like telenovelas, right? But like characters just seem to act out of character, or like and even if you say, well, maybe not, feel like people move on after 3 years, it also feels like it did a disservice to the relationship that Jane and Michael had, and also Michael's character. Even if they write him a cheap happy ending, I think it's cheap, whatever. It's why the show that must not be named is why I complain about things making no narrative sense. Like, characters like don't just change their mind about things. Like, you're not just in love with someone one day and then you know, like, just kidding. That's just not how it works. That doesn't. That's not good writing.
Well,
okay,
if you're a sociopath, that's how it works.
Well, and I would, if you're not sure, I think it can be how it works more in real life. It's not how it works in good fiction, because we need stories to make narrative sense in a way that life doesn't always make narrative sense. So,
yes, but there are stories where people fall out of love, but there's like, you know what? But like, I'm going to go back to the show that must not be named. You don't have a scene where someone sends someone to assassinate you. You don't have a scene where you're in love with someone else, and then the next moment say, "Oh, I'm going to go back to where I'm going to go die," and I also I'm going to look inside.
I'll do it with Jane the Virgin, though, because I think Jane the Virgin is Jane the Virgin's problem is that it is trying, by premise of the show, the very point of the show, for those who haven't seen it, is we are parodying and commenting on telenovelas, Mexican soap operas, essentially, by making one of our own. That's the premise of the show. And the problem that they run into is they sort of make a good show, right? Like, I mean, not that telenovelas can't be good, but they've made a show that sort of evolved beyond that to where their fans, who might not necessarily have even known the original premise, got invested in things. So then, in order to keep the concept, they made a narrative decision that hurt where they had evolved to.
Right, like How I Met Your Mother, yes.
Which is exactly How I Met Your Mother is the exact example. How I Met Your Mother, they had this idea, they built the entire show towards this idea that they had in season 1, and then 6 years go by, and the story had evolved beyond that. So now they're trying to backtrack into this idea that they'd come up with half a decade ago, and it doesn't work, right? Like everything, because they had organically grown, but for the purposes of the twist, they just had to just decide some stuff and ask people to go along with it, and nobody wanted to, right? Like the fans of How I Met Your Mother largely hate the last season. I actually like a lot of the last season because I like Tracy. Christine Milioti, who plays Tracy, is great, but the last couple of episodes, especially, just don't care for. It's like I don't need to see them together, because the show had evolved beyond that, and they felt trapped. And when a plot twist feels like a trap, that's a problem for me.
That's how I felt about the Vertigo series Preacher, and it's a series I have real mixed feelings about. I have lots of issues with it, but I feel like the first story arc set up this premise. You know, I'm going to go find God and ask him what the fuck. You know, and then the series went in all these different directions, and the last story arc, I felt like, and this was like, oh yeah, I set that thing up 60 issues ago. I better address that, huh? And it felt arbitrary and just kind of tossed off, and he just wasn't interested in that anymore. There are other issues I have with that series. There are things about it I like, but that in particular, I remember reading that last story arc, and when that premise was brought up, it's like, oh yeah, that's what this was supposed to be about.
Yeah, so one of the, so Preacher, I think, is a good example, right? Because Preacher is, I don't know, I'm going to talk about the comic. I don't want to ruin it for people who have done more on the TV show. I'm not even sure if the TV show is still going on. I stopped watching it. I enjoyed the comic quite a great deal, with caveats that wait it. But the concept of the first couple of issues of Preacher are based on a very, very much on a plot twist. What if there's a guy who has the power of the word of God? That's his one power. And that gets you into the book. But again, so much progresses beyond it. My absolute favorite issue of that entire run of Preacher, the entire series, is there is one issue where they get into a bar fight, and Jesse, who's the main character, and Cassidy, who's his best friend, they get into a bar fight and they have the fight. And at the end of the fight, Cassidy says to Jesse, "Why didn't you use your powers?" And Jesse's like, "Oh, I forgot." Like, he just forgot that he had them and it didn't matter. And what was great about that issue is I had to, right? Like, right. It wasn't about that anymore. The only reason I even had the question was because Cassidy brings it up. It's like, oh yeah, you can do this thing that is auspiciously the entire point to this book, but it doesn't matter anymore. And then it becomes much less of an issue from there on out. Mm-hmm. So.
And then when they had to come back to it at the end, it just felt kind of tagged on. I do want to go back to X-Files just quickly because we're coming up on the end here probably. That's one that just, it felt like, I mean, they didn't know they were going to be successful when it started, and it wasn't the way TV is planned now. It was this episodic thing, and they had a mythos, but I don't think they knew they were going to run for 6-7 seasons. So they kept.
I don't think they knew they were running for 2.
Yeah, right. So they introduced this big mystery, and at some point they realized, oh, we have to start giving answers, and then they did, and then they kept going. And they had to keep coming up with new mysteries and new answers. And I felt, and I was a fan of the show. I liked it a lot. But I kind of felt like they kept giving me answers that contradicted the previous answers because they just had to do something to keep the show running. So they were plot twists, but I found it really annoying after a while in that they just kept like, oh, you've just been lying to me all this time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
there's also some
that definitely happens in TV, especially with like Upon a Time, Lost,
Star Trek.
Fringe sort of had the opposite problem where they were like, oh, I guess we should start revealing stuff, which may have been a better show, but
well, X-Files especially, there's a lot of for the first season, fine, but 5 seasons in, Scully looks like an idiot. Oh my God, this can't possibly be aliens. Aliens don't exist. It's like, you fucking met aliens. You've met tons of them. Like, that aliens exist. You don't get to be surprised by this anymore. Like, maybe other people don't believe you, but you not believing Fox when he says, I think it's aliens, and you're like, oh, it's probably not aliens, just rational explanation. Like, no, there are aliens. This can't be a twist for you anymore.
Yeah. And they just kept introducing new answers to questions we'd already had answered. And it felt like this desperate, how do we keep people coming back? But yeah, that was a case where it was poorly executed, but I think poorly executed because of the circumstances by which it was written.
Well, is that what twists are? So one of the ways I brought this up in the blog where I said, why are plot twists, right? Like, why? I think that in a world where we have media that is driven by the constant need to franchise, right? Like, so much of our pop culture right now is, how do we keep this going so that we can keep the cinematic universe going? How do we keep the bucks rolling in? How do we keep streaming buys up? Whatever, right? I get that. And I'm not even trying to diss on it because I enjoy these things as much as anybody, right? But at some point, does the reliance on the plot twist hurt the narrative? Does it hurt the concept in a way that, like, can't you just instead trust me to just keep going because I'm enjoying the story? Because I will. I don't know, and I don't think I'm alone, right? Like, I don't think there are people. I don't think I'm like being elitist or culturally sophisticated where because I'm continuing to watch fucking superhero movies, like I'm watching them because I enjoy them. I don't need there to always be a twist. I don't need there to be a, again, with the Sharon thing on Falcon and Winter Soldier felt stupid to me, because it felt like a mystery that had an obvious answer. So I don't know why it's a mystery. Whereas if you'd literally just told me from the very beginning, in fact, I think I would have found it more interesting if we haven't heard from Sharon in 6 years and, oh my God, she's bad and she's working against us now. And then we spend the entire season working against her rather than wondering if she's really bad or not. And then it turns out, yeah, she's bad. Yeah, she's bad.
So it is a strong word. think. But oh no.
Yeah.
Sorry. I just got stung by wasps on Animal Crossing. Oh, that's not fun.
So that's a good point to assume we've resolved nothing, I think.
Also, shouldn't play this game while doing it. But that's what I get for shaking down trees.
We didn't see that coming.
It kind of makes me question. I mean, what you were saying, Mav, about the unexpected twist. I just read an article not that long ago that was saying that people with anxiety, one of the reasons that they like to watch shows over is because it's comforting, because you know what's going to happen, right? So, I mean, that's one of those things, right, that I think we already addressed this, that not everybody likes a plot twist. Like you said, just give it, give us a good story, give us characters that are interesting. If we care about the characters, we don't need a twist, right?
But maybe people do, right? I don't know. Maybe
some of that I think is genre dependent.
Right.
I think certainly with mysteries and some of that stuff, that's part of what the genre is. But I agree with what you're saying. If I'm engaged in the characters, there doesn't have to be this sudden like, oh my God, where did that come from? Just keep telling me the story.
Listeners, let us know in the comments whether you want to hear us do a Nancy Drew show, because the plot twist so Nancy Drew, as we record, is on there's one episode left this season. So the penultimate episode of this season has an absolutely amazing plot twist on it that I need to sit down and go back and watch all the other episodes to see where the hints are there, because they showed them to you, and it's not something that you ever could have picked up on by yourself, because there's, like I said, there's supernatural elements. This is not a spoiler for the show. The entire premise of the show is it's Nancy Drew investigates the supernatural. So there's a plot twist that changes everything that came before it, and I'm enjoying that. So I think that that's fine. If you're the kind of person who enjoys those kinds of plot twists, that's good. But maybe it's like so much other stuff. It's got to be good. And at least for me, a twist for the sake of being a twist that's where I thought Lost eventually started going wrong. It's where I thought the X-Files started going wrong. Shows that sort of now Lost, I don't want to say they overstayed their welcome. Lost wanted to leave. ABC made them stick around, right? They were like, no, we're done. Please let us kill this.
We have an ending. Let us do it.
Let us do it. And they couldn't. But I mean, I think that there's a point where you're just like, and then, something weird happened.
And then Jack got tattoos. That is the actual.
Yeah, because we got to fill up an hour of television, and to be fair, to be fair, life is unpredictable, and there are
plot twists. Yeah.
I'll say an episode that How I Met Your Mother got praised for is when Marshall's father dies. Let's see it coming, and it's a shocker, and it punches it really hard. And so not everything has to quote narrative sense, except when it does, then it should. So in short, what I'm saying is Wayne is correct. We've resolved nothing, and we should all go to bed.
Well, I saw that coming.
This was one of those episodes where we weren't really trying to resolve anything. We had a concept that we vaguely wanted to talk about. So I hope this is as enjoyable for everybody else as it is for us to just work some things out, which is, sort of, sometimes the show's good for that. Here. Oh,
here's that's a lot of what we do here.
Plot twist. I think we'll discover, that Katya is alive after all. She'll be fine.
Yeah.
Sure that everyone is shocked.
Yeah. Then that is not much of a surprise. Nicole, thanks for joining us.
Sure.
Welcome back. Always fun to have you here.
Yeah. So this is gonna be great, because I know when this episode comes out, anything you want to plug? What's going on in your life?
Well, National Popular Culture Conference. But, if you just want to listen, you can always register as a non-participant and get access to all the all the various panels, which that is one of the advantages, I guess, of it being virtual. Much easier to panel hop.
Mm-hmm. Including Wayne and myself, presuming I actually finish. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I assume because you were bringing it up, I assume you would be there. But also, in addition to Nicole, you'll have Wayne and myself, provided I actually finish mine, because that's the drama right now. Twist, will I be able to actually
information at pcaaca.org.
Mm-hmm. Linked in the show notes. Mm-hmm. And if not, well, you should listen and you should join us next year, because it is a very fun time.
It is. Next year we're in Seattle.
Oh wow.
Back to Seattle. It's been a couple of years since we were in Seattle.
I've never been to Seattle. I have friends there that have been talking about visiting for 15 years. I might have to make plans.
They have to. And the year after is San Antonio. So.
Oh wow.
Palindrome Hannah.
You can find me on my Animal Crossing island. I don't know how that works yet, so I guess you aren't able to find me on my Animal Crossing island. I'm useless.
Watch out for the smoke monster, Hannah.
Oh my God! If there suddenly is a smoke monster in Animal Crossing, only because Hannah's playing.
This episode is now worth it just because of this that no one will listen to.
Wayne.
The same as always, mostly here. Yeah. A blog that hasn't been updated in a year and a half, and daily pictures on my Instagram. It's all in the show notes.
Yep. And you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, all of the places, always at Chris Maverick. You can follow the show, all those same places, at Vox Popcast. You can also follow the show on YouTube. Like and subscribe. You get to see video versions of the show, see examples of the things that we're talking about as we talk about them. You also get access to my other podcast, Gosh Golly Wow, where we discuss the comic book Excalibur. So you get 2 podcasts for the price of one, and both of them are free. So, really, it's an awesome deal. It works out for you.
What a bargain.
Yeah, what a bargain, right. Absolutely. So also do us a favor, subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify or where the hell else you get podcasts from. And do us a big favor, leave us a 5-star review, especially on Apple Podcasts. That really helps us out. It helps other people find the show by making us more popular and boosting the algorithm, especially if you don't just rate the show 5 stars, but if you leave us a review, you write a little something about how, you were not expecting the plot twist where, Katya was alive after all. I hope. I mean, we haven't actually seen her, so we assume she's going to be alive. Tune in next week.
She's fine.
She's fine. Yes, she's fine.
She's fine.
Yes. So do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review, subscribe to us, follow our blog at www.voxpopcast.com, where you find out what we're going to be talking about next week. And you can comment on the show, on show notes. You can leave us your thoughts. You can let us know whether or not you want us to do a Nancy Drew recap show. You absolutely do. Trust me, watch the show. It is so good. Because again, I'm talking.
They do say, let's do that. So make him happy.
Yeah, I'm talking it up now because next week I have to go back to saying that Riverdale is the best show ever. And I actually am legit enjoying Nancy Drew more right now.
You really don't have to. You can let the joke die. We can pick a new joke.
No. No. I mean, it's either this or we go back to Manimal. You choose your poison. Anyway, in the meantime, let us know in the comments whether you want to hear me talk more about Manimal or about Riverdale. Which do you prefer? Anyway, in the meantime, I would like to thank Maximilian of Thought for Music for our epic theme song, building ever so more epically and playing us out. I'd like to thank Nicole for joining us. I'd like to thank you at home for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.